Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. Today we look at chapter 6 of the PHP 7 tutorial. I'd like to acknowledge that the content of this particular tutorial has been acquired from the site w3schools.com. So if you want more details, please visit this site. Any web developer should make this site their friend because it has rich content when it comes to web development. And that's why I love to use it. Okay, so in this particular topic, I want to cover, there's a typo there. I want to cover the date and time function, the PHP date. So this is not data, but date and time function. We are also going to look at the include and require statements. Then we're going to look at PHP cookies. And finally, we're going to look at PHP sessions. So far, at least we've used the include and require statements and also PHP sessions in our practical. So I think we can begin. So the PHP date function is really used to format either the date and or the time. And most systems require that you use the date or the time at one point or another. For example, in our voting, in the system that you're building, the voting management system or something, I think so far we used a timestamp when someone was registering. So that's one of the, when someone was registering to vie for a particular position. So that's one of the examples. And for example, also, maybe when a voter is voting, we also want to, we want to capture the exact time when they are voting. So for such features, other than using the date and time, other than using the timestamp feature of the MySQL database, we can also use the date and time function. Now, really, the date and time function has the following syntax. This one here. So it starts with the date, and because it's a function, you must have the opening and the closing brackets there. Then the first thing you specify is the format. How do you want to format that time? And number two, you give it a timestamp. Now, the format is required, meaning you have to specify it, but the timestamp is optional. The timestamp is optional. Now, what is the timestamp? The timestamp is the default current time and date. The default current time and date. The format here is simply how you want to print out the date and or the time. So we're going to see that in just a moment. Okay, so here again, a timestamp, a sequence of characters denoting the date and or the time at which a certain event has occurred. So actually, this is it. In PHP, we want to use the date and time function in order to capture when an event occurred. For example, when a user voted, or when they logged in, or when they logged out. So time is important so that we can be able to keep a log for that particular individual. So let's see, how do we get a simple date? Now, how to do that is that we have to specify the format parameter by using the date function. So that date function will specify how to format that particular date or time. Now, these are some of the commonly used parameters when it comes to formatting the date. For example, you can use a letter D in order to represent the day of the month. The day of the month, when you use D, is going to be printed in this format, 01 to 31. So if, for example, today is 22nd, then it's going to print 22 for the day. Then M, as you might have guessed already, is for month. So again, this is going to print 2 characters from 01 all the way to 12. Then Y is for the year. Normally, when you use uppercase Y, it prints 4 digits. Then L, on the other hand here, is used to represent the day of the week. That is lowercase L. So the day of the week, that is it Monday? Is it Tuesday? Is it Wednesday? Etc., etc. Now, in order to separate the day, the month, the year, or even the day of the week, we normally use certain characters like we've always used when we write. So you either use a forward slash, a full stop, or a hyphen. So normally we also use these characters in between these letters in order to create that particular date format. So this is a good example of what we've just said. Now, if we wanted to print today's date, we can print it in PHP by using the echo. So we just bring echo, then printing out this string, today is, then we concatenate using a dot, the dot operator here. Then we use the date function, date. So here we are using capital Y, then a forward slash, small m, small d. So if you do that, then it's going to print 2019. This is an example that was done during that time. Then the day, the month, then the day. And they are separated with, as you can see, the forward slash. So we're just using the forward slash to separate them. Similarly, if you do the same and use dots, then they're going to be separated using dots. And if you do the same here using hyphens, then they're going to be separated using hyphens, as you can see here. Otherwise, the last example here is printing small l there, the day of the week. So when this particular program was run, and then it was a Monday. It was a Monday. So really, that is how we use it. One thing I'll just like to point out is that in order to format this, you have to put it inside. You have to put it inside the double quotes for them to work. So always remember that. And the name of the date function is simply date. So that's the name of the function. Okay. Now, one of the common applications again of the date function is to generate an automatic copyright year. An automatic copyright year. When you visit most websites, at the very bottom, you'll see something like this. You'll see something like this. The copyright symbol, then when the site was created, and the current year. So how is this achieved? Like this. So of course, we use this for printing this. That is HTML. Then we also, using HTML, we also print out the current year and the hyphen. Then now using PHP, we echo the current year. So we only echo Y, and it's going to print the current year. For example, 2022. So that's how you do that, so that you don't have to change this value each new year. So that's how we automate it. That's why we are saying here automatic copyright year. So that's a great tip. Always make sure that you use it, because generally, anytime you create a web application, then by default, that work is copyrighted. And it's important to just display it on the footer from which period to which period the copyright is still active. Okay. Otherwise, other than date, we can also get simple time. We can also get simple time using the date function. And to get the time, these are the characters that we use. H for hour. In this case, it is 24 hours when you use uppercase H. Otherwise, if you use lowercase h, then it gives you the 12-hour format. Then I, lowercase I is for minutes, S for seconds, and A for example, is for AM, or PM. I'm not sure how many of you knew that AM is that ante-meridian, while PM is post-meridian. Okay, so let's look at a few examples of the time output. If we wanted to print the current time, what do we do? So we do echo in PHP. The time is just a string. You can tell it's a string because it's inside the double quotes there. We use the dot to concatenate. Then we use the date function here. Now for the date function, we've used lowercase h to get the hour in 12-hour format. So we can see it's 05, meaning it's 5. Then we are using this just as a separator. You see, we have it here as a separator, and we also have it here. So that one and this one. Okay, then we also have this I to give us the minutes, then S to give us this, the seconds, then A to give us AM or PM. So you've used A there. Depending on whether it's AM or PM, it's going to print it. So that's how we tell the time when we want to print it out in PHP. Okay. Okay, so note that the PHP date function will return the current date and time. Now this is important, of the server. What does this mean? If you've created your site and you've hosted it, for example, on the cloud, on Google servers. Now, depending on the location of that particular Google server, then the current date and time will not be the time of where you are. If you're in Kenya and that server has been hosted, for example, in the US, then you're going to get the current time of the US and not the current time, for example, of Nairobi, Kenya. So it is important to understand that. So what happens if, yes, you've hosted with Google, but you want the time to be the time of Kenya because that system is supposed to be used here? How do you go about that? PHP has a solution for that. You do that by setting your time zone. So let's see how that is done. So here's an example. Now PHP offers a function. This function is called date default time zone set. So it's written as date underscore default underscore time zone underscore set. Now, when you use this function, you give it this parameter, and this parameter really is the time zone. So normally the time zones have been specified in this particular format. That is the country and then / the city. So when you specify the time zone, then you use the date function, then it's going to give you the date and or time of that particular time zone. Now, for example, if you wanted to set this particular time zone to be for Nairobi, you do this date default time zone underscore set. Then our country is Kenya. No. Actually, it's not country. It's supposed to be continent. I'm sorry, I said country. It's supposed to be continent. So here for Nairobi, it's supposed to be Africa, like that. Then the capital city of Kenya. So Nairobi, like that. So that's how you do it. That's how you do it. On the other hand, if you wanted, for example, if you wanted to get the time zone for Uganda, then it will be Africa, then Kampala, like that, then semicolon. So that's how you do it. That's how you do it. So depending on where the system is being used, if you want to get the correct time, then you have to specify the date default time zone. Now, another thing I'd like to mention here is things like this, for example, things like the default time zone. You normally put this on the functions page. You remember during the lab, we created a page called myfunctions.php. So you just put this there. Then you include that page on every other page so that you don't have to rewrite this on every other page. So that's another tip I'd like to give you right there. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude about the PHP date and time function. Just called date and time because it prints both, but the name of the function is date, so we don't have a time function, just the date function. Depending on the parameters you pass it, will print out the time. That said, we actually also have a time function. Okay, let me just mention it. So we have a function called this time function. Now, for example, you can create a variable called time, then you equate it to the time function like this. Now, if you do this, then the time function provides the timestamp. Have I spelled time correctly? Yeah. It actually provides the timestamp of that particular moment. So that is the number of seconds since 1st January midnight 1970. Normally that is what this provides. So the number of seconds. So if you want to capture the current time, you can use the timestamp. Then now you can store the value here that has been stored here in the database, for example. So that's how we capture the time if we don't want to use the timestamp function of the MySQL database. So that's called the time function. But if you just want to print out the time, then you use the date function. So I hope you remember that. Okay, and now to the second part of this particular topic. Here we want to learn about the include and the require files. We've so far used these files severally during our practical, and I'm sure you know what each one of them got to do and their difference. But just as a reminder, include or require normally would take the code, and not just the code but also text. By text we mean even the comments, the code, and the markup, which is now HTML code that is inside there. So normally it will take everything in a particular file and copy it into the file that uses that particular include or require statement. Normally we use this when we want to include the same PHP or HTML or text on multiple pages of a website. And we're going to see a good example later on. Now here, what is the difference between include and require? Because both of them do the same thing, which is copy the code from a particular file to the file that has used them. But the main difference between the two is that require will produce a fatal error. By fatal error we mean, is it fatal or fatal? Fatal error, we mean the error will stop any other script from being executed. So if you've required a particular file and that file is not found, then no other script below that require line is going to be executed. On the other hand, include will only produce a warning error, just a warning error, and the other scripts below it are going to be executed, So that's the main difference between the require statement and the include statement. So how do you use them? You use the require when the file is required. That is, it must be there for that particular page to function. On the other hand, you use include when the file is not necessarily important for that particular page to be able to function. So it can be there or it can miss, but that particular page will still continue to function. So for example, if it's a page that requires database connection and you need to include the connect.php page, then you must use the require. Otherwise, if it's a page that has no database interaction, you can maybe use include if you need to include that page, the connection.php page. So that's just an example. So the syntax for that, just simply like that, the include keyword, then you can use double or single quotes, then the file name and the extension. Remember, this has to be the exact location where that particular page is. Similarly, for require, it is like that. Okay. So here, assume we have a standard footer file with the name footer.php that looks like this. So this particular page just wants to print out the copyright information of the site on the footer. So we have this code and we've saved it as footer.php. So how do we ensure that this particular footer appears on every other page and we don't have to rewrite it on every other page? How do we do that? Your guess is correct. So we do that by using the include statement. So at the very bottom, just before we close our body, then we do include footer.php like that. And therefore, we're going to use this include statement in every other page. So that's how we do it. In our practical, we're going to do something. Really, we're going to save different parts. What can I say? Trying to find a good way to explain it. See side. Okay, so just look here. Our page looks something like this. It looks something like this. We have oh, sorry. We have that. Then maybe we have that. So you can see from this, we have here, we can call this, for example, header. So we have the header. Similarly, here we have the footer. Then here we have the aside. Then here we have the content. Now you'll realize that on every other page, whether we are on vi.php or vote.php or results.php, the only part that is going to be changing is the content area, only this part. What does that tell you? What that tells you is that we can save this part of the code as header.php. Then we save this part of the code as a side.php. Then save this part of the code as footer.php. Then in every page, we simply include them. Now this technique is very important because it also makes maintenance quite easy. For example, if you want to add another menu item, so far maybe we have Vi and we have vote. What if we want to add results? So if you want to add results and you've not used this format of including, then you have to add that menu item in all the other pages, in each of the pages that exist. So if there are 10 pages, you have to go editing the code and creating the hyperlink in each of the pages. But if you've just saved this as a side, then included, and this is where your menu items are, and you've included them in each page, then you only have to add that particular menu item on this page only. So I'm not sure whether you really get it, but I hope you do, because that is very important. So during our next practical, we're going to do that. So far we have after login, I think we really have 2 pages, the dashboard and the Vi. So we're going to create the vote page and the results page. And with those pages, we are going to just include the header and the footer and the side. So we're going to break the page into different parts. So you'll understand that even more during the practical. Okay. So that is it about the require and the include statements. So now we look at the PHP cookies. Now, a cookie is often used to identify a user. Very similar to a session. A session is also used to identify a user. Now, a cookie is a small file that the server embeds on a user's computer. By embedding, we simply mean we are storing those details on your computer. Now, this is the main difference between a cookie and a session. While both a cookie and a session are used to store some details to identify the user, a cookie is stored on a user's computer, while the session is stored on the server. So while visiting sites, one of the questions they normally ask you, which is actually a requirement, a data protection requirement, is, do you agree? Do you agree that we should use cookies? Do you agree that we should use cookies? And maybe when you click no, then maybe you cannot be able to interact with that particular website. So it simply means, do you agree that we have to store some of the things that you're doing? And some of these cookies are even used, they're actually used for example, showing you tailor-made advertisements. For example, if you search for a laptop on Google, then the next few advertisements that you're getting, laptops. So they achieve that through a cookie. And that's why they need your consent for you to agree that they store such details. Okay, now each time the same computer requests a page with a browser, it will send the cookie too. Now with PHP, you can both create and retrieve cookie values, just like you can do with sessions. Now, a cookie is created using the setCookie function. The setCookie function takes in a number of parameters. One of them is the name of the cookie, then the value that you want to store. Then when the cookie will expire. So because you're saving it on the user's computer, maybe you just want to store it for a month or 2 months or a day or a week. Then it will be automatically deleted when the time expires. The other thing is the path. Which pages do you want these particular cookies should, on your site, which pages should be able to read this cookie. So that's the path. Domain is your web address, like www.facebook.com. Whether you want to use HTTPS, secure, and then HTTP only. Now, of all these parameters, only the name parameter, this one, only the name parameter is required. All the others are optional. Okay. And also, by the way, another good example of a cookie, when you enter a username and a password, when logging in, for example, to Instagram on your website, and it asks you, do you want us to remember? Do you want us to remember your username and password? Then you click remember. When you click remember, what happens is that your browser is simply creating a cookie. So it's saving whatever you enter. And therefore, next time, and it's also saving the domain, that it's instagram.com. So next time you open instagram.com and you go to the login page, then this domain can be able to read that particular cookie, that username and password. And therefore, the only thing you have to do is to click login. So they use a cookie for remembering the username and the password. Okay, so how do we create and retrieve a cookie? Let's see that here. Now, you create a cookie by using the set cookie function. So the first thing it takes is the cookie name. Here we've just created a variable, cookie underscore name. We've given it the value user. And the next thing it takes is the value. So John Doe, the cookie value is just a variable. Then the next thing it takes is the expiry date or expiry time. So here what you're simply doing is we're using the time function to get the current time in seconds. So the current time, then we are adding a day has this 86,400 seconds. Then we are multiplying it by 30. Then we are adding it to the current time plus. So we're simply saying that this cookie will expire after 30 days because current time plus this number of seconds. So this cookie will expire after 30 days. Then after the expiry, the next thing is the path. So on the path, if you just put a /, it means that all pages within this website can be able to access and read this cookie. So that is what we have done here. That is what we've done here. Okay. The next bit of the code that you should understand is this one here. So here we want to learn. So this is how to set the cookie. What we've seen here, how to set the cookie. Now here we want to see how do you retrieve cookie value, a cookie value. So we see that here. Sorry, here. So we're just echoing. Echo value is, so just like sessions, and $_cookie, then the name of the cookie. The name of the cookie. So that will print the value of the cookie. Now, in this particular example, we are working with an if statement. The if statement is simply checking if the cookie exists. Does the cookie exist? So again, just like a session, we use the isSet function. And here we are just negating it. If it does not exist, that's why you have the not. If it does not exist, then print the cookie named is not set. That means it does not have a value. It does not have a value. Else, then print the cookie name. So here we're just echoing the cookie name and print the cookie value. So when you run this code the first time, this is what you're going to get. The cookie named user is not set. In order for you to be able to get this second part, you have to reload the page. You have to reload the page, because when you run the page for the first time, it simply sets the cookie, and now for it to be able to read it, you have to refresh, because it's only after setting that you can be able to read it again. So that's why you might need to reload your page in order for you to get the cookie value. So I hope you understand that. Okay. So this is an important note. This is a very important note, that the set cookie function must appear before the root HTML tag, opening tag. Okay, how do we modify a cookie? Just like with sessions, you just give it a new value. So it had the value John Doe earlier. So now we just change the variable to Alex Potter. Then we use the cookie, set cookie function. So set cookie, then we give it the new value. So that's how you change the value of a cookie. How do you delete a cookie? You delete a cookie by using the same function you used to create it. Only that, you give it an expiration date that is in the past. So if we want to create the cookie we just created, the cookie name is user. So we use set cookie user. We don't want to give it any value, because after all, we are deleting it. Then for the time, we take the current time. We take the current time using the time function. Then we subtract even 1 second. Here we are just subtracting 1 hour. But you can subtract even just a single second. And therefore, the computer will know that this cookie has expired, and it will delete it. It will delete it. So that's how we delete a cookie. Okay, so this is another example. So this example creates a small script that checks whether cookies are enabled. So first, we try to create a test cookie with the set cookie function. Then we count the cookie. Then we count, then we count the cookie array variable. Okay, so here we are setting the cookie. Sometimes my keyboard does not work, or is it slow? Set cookie, then the name of the cookie is test underscore cookie. The value is test. Then the time, we want it to last for 1 hour. And then this is the path. Okay, so how do we check whether cookies are enabled here or not? By using the count. So count cookie. If it's greater than 0, then we print out cookies are enabled. Otherwise, we print out cookies are disabled. So that's how you're able to know whether cookies are enabled or not, by using the count function here. Okay, and so that is the end of PHP cookies. Interesting. We hope to use this particular cookies in an example. Maybe in our login page, we can have a checkbox for remember me. So if a user checks that box, then we create a cookie and save his username and his password. That is the email address and the password. So that next time they visit, we already remember them, and they can just click on login. And finally, PHP sessions. We've already dealt with sessions. We know that sessions is a way of storing information that can be accessed through multiple pages. Unlike a cookie, this information is stored on the server and not on the user's computer, So normally we use sessions especially for keeping some details of the user that we need after they've logged in, and for monitoring that particular login session and the activities that they do. Okay, so we know that session variables solve the problem. The problem is that when you move from one page to another, you're not able to access information from the previous page. So sessions are used to solve that problem by storing the user information that can be used across multiple pages. So information such as the username, their first name, their favorite color, etc. Now, by default, session variables last until the user closes the browser or until you destroy that particular session. So that is important. I hope you're having a read. Okay. Now, as I've mentioned earlier during the practicals, you must start a session. We start a session using the session_start function. Then after that, to access the values, you need to use the $_session super global variable. So now we want to create a page called demo_session1.php. Then we want to start a new PHP session and set some session variables. So how to do that here? Now, sessions, just like cookies, especially the session start function, should appear before any HTML tag. It should always appear at the very top before any HTML tag. So this is how we've started the session. Then here, we're just creating two session variables. One with the name favorite color, another one favorite animal. Then we assign it some value. So that is how we set session variables. So I just mentioned that. Okay, so next we want to create another page called demo session 2. Now on this page, we want to access the session information that we set on the first page, which is demo session 1. So notice that session variables are not passed individually to each new page. Instead, they are retrieved from the session we opened at the beginning of each page, which is using the session start variable. Also notice that all the session variables values are stored in the sessions super global. So this is just what we want to do. So in demo 2, again, we begin by starting the session. We start the session there. Then inside the body, we do this to access the values. We just want to print out favorite color is, then we print the session value like that. So using the super global variable, $_session, and the name of the session variable. Similarly here, the name of the session variable. So if we do that, then it's going to print out favorite color is green and favorite animal is cat, like that. Another way to print all the values of your session is by using the printr function. Printr function. So if you use print_r and you print the session super global, it's going to print an associative array, because the session variable is actually an associative array with the name of the position and the value. Name of the position and the value. So that's the other way you can be able to print out your sessions in order to view them. Otherwise, you can also modify the value of a session variable. That's what we want to do here, to change. How to do that? Just do it like this. Simple. It will just overwrite, just give it a different value. And now if we use printer, you'll see the name and the value is now yellow and no longer green as it were earlier. Was it green really? Yes, it was green. Okay. How to destroy a session? You destroy a session by using either session unset or session destroy functions. So session unset is used to remove all session variables. Session destroy will destroy a particular session. You can, for example, put a name. So both of them, we've used them before. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patience and for your time and for listening in. So that is the end of this particular topic. I'm sure you've enjoyed seeing some of the things that we've already used in the lab, and whatever we've not covered in the lab, we are going to make sure we cover it in the lab. For example, the cookies there. Asanteni sana. So let's meet in the next lab. Bye bye.